Okay, so we are about to leave for Tombstone. I officially have a little over 10,000 miles on the Pan Am here, and so I figured this would be a good time to do a 1 year of ownership, because I bought it in November of last year, and I also have about 10,000 miles. So 1 year, 10,000 mile review. It's kind of a nice long-term review. Andrew is decking out his brand new Limited.
Bought it today, and the proper way to break in a Ultra Limited is to just hit the road, go east. Just get on this freeway right here. And
there is a song that says the opposite, that you should go west, but
no, we're heading east.
We're heading east.
Yeah.
So I thought this would be a good opportunity on this trip to basically shoot the review at the same time. So for the too long didn't watch among us, definitely my favorite bike I've ever had by a significant margin. So I'm looking forward to kind of walking you through why I'm so in love with this bike, why I made the changes that I've made to it, and what my plan for the future is for the bike. But yeah, anyways, let's go ahead and hit the road. My plan of shooting a 10K mile review on the Pan Am here has been thwarted by the weather. Everything I own is wet, even the stuff that I didn't bring on the trip. I think just by like proximity to my existence, my being is now wet. So unfortunately, it's postponed till tomorrow. Maybe I'll shoot it tomorrow. Maybe I'll get some footage. Maybe I can get some B-roll of just an absolutely beaten to heck Pan Am. But yeah, this is worse than the amount of rain that we had in Santa Cruz. This is a struggle. This is a real struggle. Well, we're at the Jerome Grand here, and this is day 3 of the adventure here, and today's the first day without a huge amount of rain on the forecast, so today's going to be the day that I talk the most probably about the bike. And I've shot a lot of footage up to this point. I'm sure I'll be splicing in cuts of me being sad, but honestly, I'm just going to get some footage, and I'll probably just sit down in front of the bike when we get back and just talk about that and the bike overall. And I'm just going to get some footage from the trip to play in the background, and maybe go over just a few of my general thoughts. Alright, so we're rolling out of Jerome, and I think now's a good opportunity to talk about how spooky the Pan America is, because it's nice and foggy. We got Eric, and of course we have Brandon already rolled by. Let's go with these guys. I think first and foremost, what I want to do is I want to talk about what an adventure bike is. An adventure bike is first and foremost, especially in the big category bikes like this one, a touring bike. I see in our comment section that a lot of people are requesting Harley make a touring bike with the Rev Max, and I know what they mean. They mean like a proper bagger. But I also think that I get a lot of questions from customers saying, "Hey, is this Harley's new dual sport?" And I don't shut them down. I don't go, "No, that's not a dual sport," because motorcycle categories are kind of fluid, and I get it. You don't need to use the proper terminology in every situation for me to understand what you're saying. So when you call this bike a dual sport, you take away, in my mind at least, a lot of it. Whoa, that's crazy. I've only done this road at night when we came through here last, and holy heck is it incredible when it's foggy. So as I was saying, you really don't want your mindset to be limited by the terminology that you're using. Calling this bike a dual sport really takes away the amount of touring potential, or it removes the possibility of this being a touring bike first and foremost from your mind. What I tell customers is that, especially the big heavyweight bikes of this class, unless you're a very talented dirt rider, these are really 80% on-road and 20% off-road. If you're the kind of guy who likes to moto camp, but a lot of the good camp spots are, a few miles up a fire road or a dirt pack trail or something like that, this is a much better option than something like a Limited. You can get nearly as much stuff on this bike, capacity-wise, but when you get to that dirt road, you're going to have a much better time. You're going to have a lot more ground clearance. You're going to have traction control that's designed for the dirt. You're going to have ABS that's designed for the dirt. You're going to have rider modes that limit the power, you know, when you're in the dirt. You're gonna have probably tires that are a little bit dirt focused. You're gonna have a bike that's almost half the weight. And all those things work together to make this bike a lot better in the dirt than a traditional touring bike. But make no mistake, this is first and foremost, in my mind, a touring bike. In fact, if you bought this bike and never took it in the dirt, you put some sport touring tires on this bike and you put the sport bags on it, you'd have an amazing sport touring machine. And when people ask the motor company to build a touring bike with the Rev Max, I just think that those people are not looking at the Pan America as a legitimate touring option, which it is.
So I kind of want to just jump right into how it is to tour on this. And there's a few categories I want to go into when it comes to touring that matter to me. Maybe these are not the ones that matter to you. If you have any questions when it comes to touring that I don't answer, leave them down in the comment section and I'll try to address them. But I'll just run through what are to me the most important aspects of touring. So first and foremost is going to be comfort. And comfort includes a lot of different factors. Wind protection is a big one. This bike has pretty superb wind protection, all things considered. It's obviously not going to be as much wind protection as something like an Ultra Limited, but it's closer to a bagger, in my opinion, than it is to a Softail. Now, I haven't spent a lot of time on a Lowrider ST, so maybe that would take the wind protection on a Softail to a place I have never, encountered, but I've ridden plenty of the bikes with the old FXR T-style fairing, like on the Coast Glides, and I imagine that the new one is pretty similar, but probably a little bit better, and I would imagine probably less buffeting on the new fairing compared to something like a quarter fairing or a T-Sport fairing. This bike has a lot better wind protection than Softail. So, if you're looking at it from a touring perspective, it's going to be probably about as good of a protection as something like a big full-size windshield would be on a Road King, but maybe even a little bit better because you do have some lower leg protection. And in addition, you've got the hand guards from the factory, so those actually help out a fair bit more than you might expect. Between those two things, in the comfort section, I'd say wind protection is pretty darn strong. Not as good as a Limited, but a lot better than a Softail. Another big component for me when it comes to touring is actually performance. It's not something that everybody always thinks about, but I'm touring for the purpose of finding fun roads in many cases. Like for us, our destinations, we don't get to spend very much time at them because our road trips are so fast and so short. And what does that mean? That means that the road is the destination. And so I want a bike that is a lot of fun on those twisty roads. And the Pan Am is arguably, in my opinion, the most fun bike that Harley makes on a twisty road. It is incredibly responsive. It's lightweight, relatively speaking, at just over 550 pounds. It's around the weight of a Sportster in the special configuration. And it's even lighter if you've got the standard. And then engine performance is great, braking performance is great. You've got the ability to go from the comfort setting on suspension when you're on the highway, and then when you get to that twisty road, you can set it to sport mode or road mode, depending on how bumpy it is, and suddenly the suspension's a lot stiffer, the bike's a lot more responsive, it's going to be a lot more confidence inspiring when you're going through those twisty roads, and you've got a lot of lean angle, so you're not really worried about dragging peg, and you've got wild amounts of power too. So if you want a wheelie coming out of every corner, you can, although we don't endorse that. But regardless, it's excellent performer. It's absurdly fast. It stops absurdly well. It turns really, really well. It's a lot of fun on a twisty road. So if you're the kind of guy who really the roads are the destination, the Pan Am is a great option. Luggage capacity is a big question mark for anyone who's looking to tour. How much you can comfortably pack into your bike and how your bike handles that extra weight and luggage is really important. And the Pan Am really excels there. You're not going to be able to get as much onto the Pan Am, probably, at least not in any kind of reasonable way, as you would on something like a Limited. Certainly not without like really stacking bags upon bags on the bike. But you can get a surprising amount of stuff into these bikes. I find them to be more than adequate for packing all my camera gear, which is pretty substantial at this point, and then everything else I would need on the trip, just the normal essentials. One thing to mention about the luggage is just how versatile it is. If you're doing a road trip and you're going to an area where you want to be able to lock your bags, you can put the hard bags on there. Or if you're going into the dirt and you might be tipping over and you don't want a hard bag falling on your leg, then you can go ahead and throw on some soft bags. There's tons of aftermarket options too available. I have on my bike right now they're kind of like a hybrid soft hard pannier from Kriega. They're really, really nice. This is really cool because a normal soft bag wants to cave in on itself when you pull things out, but these retain their rectangular shape even when empty. These Harley soft bags are great. I've used them on multiple trips and they're really durable. I've crashed in them a few times in the dirt and they've held up extremely well. The hard bags store an immense amount of stuff, and you've got the security of being able to lock your bags. And so you can kind of set up the bike for what you need, which is really cool. You know, if I'm commuting, I can take the bags off and have a really narrow bike. If I'm going to a place where, you know, I want the extra security of locks, I can put my hard bags on or lock it up. If I need extra space, you know, there's plenty of ways I can add more luggage capacity to the bike between a tank bag. You know, a lot of companies make bags that you can mount to your engine guards here. So luggage is not only ample, there's a lot of luggage space, but it's also really versatile, and you can kind of tune the bike to whatever type of ride you're going to be doing in that instance. That versatility is really nice because it really does lend the bike into being a jack of all trades. All right, so what are the downsides to this bike as a touring bike? Well, I'd say first and foremost, two-up riding is just not going to be as good as a limited. And I think this is a good time to add some pretty important context. I'm comparing this bike's touring experience, right, to baggers, right? And when you look at it from that perspective, right, we're talking about something like an ultra limited is like a purpose-built road-going touring bike. It's best in class in pretty much every category when it comes to luggage space and overall comfort, refinement, fit and finish, build quality, wind protection. Like, the limited is a gold standard, so not being as good as a limited isn't really like negative so much as it is just understanding that depending on what you're doing, the advantages and disadvantages of certain bikes might point you in one or another direction. When it comes to two-up riding on a full-size dresser is going to be better than this. Those bikes have a longer wheelbase, they've got more passenger seating options and more comfortable backrest options for your passenger. And those are all things that really do lend to overall comfort with you and a passenger. That being said, there are people that tour across Europe on adventure bikes all the time, two-up. So it's all kind of relative to what your perspective is, but I do know from talking to Matt and from, you know, riding with my fiance that this is probably a great bike for 100 to 200 miles a day of two-up riding. But if you are the kind of person who wants to ride 400, 500 mile days on your way to Sturgis with your wife on the back, you know, a limited is probably going to be a better option for you. So another downside to the bike is kind of related to one of its upsides. So the Rev Max is a very high performing motor, but on the flip side of that, it just means that the red line is a fair bit higher than something like the Milwaukee 8, and therefore the cruising RPMs are a lot higher than the Milwaukee 8. And so, while I wouldn't describe the bike as buzzy, it's nowhere near as buzzy as a lot of other bikes I've ridden. It's not as sputtery smooth as the Milwaukee 8. It's a little bit buzzier, not bad at all, but that higher performing engine, that higher strung engine feels higher strung while you're cruising, of course. I personally think that a lot of people will be very, very comfortable on the Pan Am, ergonomically speaking. It's a very neutral bike with a very upright seating position, very comfortable peg position, and multiple seat options. Even from the factory, the stock seat you can move up or down. Then they have a low seat and a tall boy seat, and they have bar risers available. So you can do a lot to adjust the ergonomics, but you can do basically infinite number of things to adjust the ergonomics of a bagger. Baggers, ergonomically speaking, I think are a little bit better lended to super long distance touring just because you're able to adjust them a bit more. You can still do that with the Pan Am. You can get these things extremely comfortable. I'm very, very comfortable on it, and Matt Laidlaw, who's 6'6", is extremely comfortable on his Pan Am and has no issues riding all day. So once again, I'm comparing this to a limited, which is kind of the gold standard of comfort, and this just doesn't match up to that, but I don't know why you would expect it to, because it's a completely different class of bike. And then the last downside really for touring is chain maintenance, which is just kind of the nature of the beast. You don't want to take a belt into the dirt, and so that means you're stuck with a chain or a shaft drive. Shaft drive's heavier, has a little bit more parasitic loss. Chain is a little bit more annoying because you've got to adjust it and lubricate it. There's trade-offs to every final drive system, but for touring, on-road touring, belt is my favorite. You know, I've got to mention something bad about touring on the bike, and so I'll say that having to, you know, lubricate the chain and adjust it regularly is kind of annoying, especially someone coming from belts where I never really thought about it. It's definitely a little bit of an adjustment, but not that big a deal. So the next big category I want to jump into is commuting. This bike is probably, in my opinion, like the most perfect commuter bike that has ever been devised for someone who has a highway-oriented commute. My commute is 20 miles each way. 90% of that is highway. I don't spend a lot of time on city streets, so something with good highway performance, big gas tank, really comfortable suspension, good wind protection, cruise control, and the ability to carry enough stuff so I don't have to wear a backpack is something that checks all the boxes. In addition, it being really, really safe between traction control, really advanced ABS, and amazing brakes, really good power so I can get out of the harm's way. Those factors are really important to me too, and the Pan Am does exceedingly well in all of those categories. Finally, the bike's narrower than most baggers. So while baggers do really, really well for commuting in a lot of ways, they're relatively heavy, which means that they're just not as nimble if you're weaving in and out of traffic. And if you're splitting lanes, they are also, with the fairing, a little bit wider than these Pan Ams. So Pan Am's really easy to split lanes with, which is really important to me in California. Cuts my commute significantly and keeps me safer. In addition, you've got LED lights all the way around, which makes you more visible, and you've got the ability to add more LEDs like I have on here to make it even brighter. So I love it for commuting. And for those of you who have maybe like a naked sport bike right now that you commute on, the Pan Am is a great option for you if you're tired of maybe having a small tail bag or wearing a backpack or having limited wind protection or maybe not having cruise control, because this essentially feels very much like a naked sport bike. It's got a torquey V-twin engine, tons of horsepower, pretty lightweight, but unlike most naked sport bikes, it's also got great wind protection, cruise control, heated grips, and enough baggage space that you could ride to Sturgis on it. So if you're looking for something that's a little bit more comfortable than even your naked sport bike is, this is a great option. So for those of you who are watching this and maybe aren't in the world of Harleys, but are considering going in on a Pan Am, it makes a great commuter bike. So a lot of people that are gonna be tuning into a 1 year, 12,000 mile review are gonna wanna know what kind of reliability issues I've had, especially considering that I have one of the earliest production Pan Ams in existence, probably, considering that I bought the first one that we got. I just had to wait a while because it was a demo. But considering that I bought our demo, got a really, really early production one, and have put as many miles on it as I've had, I think I've run into probably most of the issues that anyone might reasonably expect to run into. And in all honesty, my bike's been pretty darn solid. I've had two bigger mechanical issues. First thing that went out was my fuel pump. And honestly, it didn't go out. It just started making a weird noise. We sent a video with the noise to Harley and they replaced it and never left me stranded, never did anything weird, just made a weird noise. So really not that big a deal. And then after that, I noticed after I installed my lights that when I was sitting at idle, my stator wasn't putting out enough volts. It was dropping into like the 12s. For whatever reason, I got a bad one. First phase wasn't putting out as much as it should have, which meant that at idle, my battery was getting drained. It didn't leave me stranded again, but I didn't want to take the trip to the Grand Canyon on the bike. So for those of you who noticed, I was on Andrew's bike on the Grand Canyon trip. I even mentioned it in the video. It happened literally the week of the trip that we noticed, so there was not enough time to get the bike. Luckily, Andrew let me borrow his Pan Am, so I was still able to do that. So those are the two main mechanical things I've had, neither of which we've seen on a lot of Pan Ams. We've done one fuel pump on one other Pan Am. It was also making a weird noise, but also didn't leave the owner stranded. So anyways, we haven't seen that on a lot of bikes. We've only done one other than mine. And then we've never replaced a stator on any of the other bikes. So it's certainly not normal, or it's not like an expected or known issue on the bike. I think more commonly people have little electrical gremlins here, like check engine lights that come on and that kind of stuff. They're not really electrical, they're more like software gremlins. And I think most of the people are not having them anymore because over the first 5 months of the bike being out, Harley was just continuously launching new revisions of the software. I'd say after month 3 or 4, I had very few instances of any kind of weird software bug. But I will say that I think if you're having those now, to check the status of your battery and make sure that you're keeping your bike on the tender, because when these things fire up, they really want to have a good amount of juice going in, or they're more likely, it seems, to throw a code, or at least that's kind of our experience. It won't be a code for anything meaningful. Oftentimes it seems kind of almost random. Bike will be running and performing totally fine, and the next time you fire it up, it'll probably go away. But it's very likely due to, at least in my experience, just having a poorly charged battery. So keep your battery on a tender, make sure the life has been good. My battery ended up dying a little bit earlier, but it was only because I think this was a demo unit, not to mention the issue I had with the stator was probably not good for my battery, because like I said, most Pan Ams we see now have very few little software glitches, and mine, after I replaced the battery, has been absolutely perfect. I haven't had it throw any weird codes or do anything weird in the last probably 6 months or so. So this isn't 100% related to reliability, but it is something that really does bug me. It's probably more related to touring, to be honest, but I really hope that Harley continuously updates both the Senna head unit that I have, which is the Senna 50S, I think. It's the Harley branded one, and then also the software, because I updated everything on my 30K, and I updated the head unit multiple times, and I could never really get it to consistently stay paired. And what I mean by that is, maybe 30, 40 miles into a ride, it would just randomly disconnect. And even before that, looking left or looking right or sometimes just moving around would cause the audio to cut out a little bit. And so I would just never really pair my phone to the head unit because I got a better experience just using the controls on the head unit. But what that means is that all the hand controls on the right side that are related to volume, I never use. And they're like front and center. The most prominent controls on the right hand controls, I don't use. All that space is wasted because the connectivity system is not that reliable. And so that's really frustrating for someone like me because I ride this bike every day. I would love to be able to use the hand controls so I don't have to take my hand off the bar to change songs, and just so that the hand controls on the right hand side are not wasted space. And Harley controls the Senna because it's their Harley branded 50S one, and they control the ability to update the software, and they control the head unit software. So they have control over both ends of the product, which means that, and I have an iPhone, so it's not even like I have like an unusual phone. So if you have an Android or an iPhone, those are the two main operating systems. So it should work pretty well for those, and yet my connectivity is not that great. I bought the 50S hoping that it would improve, and because I needed a new comm unit after one of our rides in the rain. And first ride, immediately I rode out of here and one of the buttons, like the screen, like locked up. And so I couldn't change songs anymore. And I couldn't even change songs there. So I had to ride home without being able to change my song at all. And so after that, immediately unpaired it and didn't use it again. So Harley, if you're watching this, I love the bike. I love everything about it. But if you could just work on the connectivity between your own branded headset and your dash, that would be awesome. I'm not going to talk too much about dirt performance because honestly I don't have a lot of business doing that, but I will touch on a few things I really, really like about the bike in the dirt. I love the ABS system in the dirt. I was always afraid in the dirt, and still kind of am afraid in the dirt, to grab a lot of front brake. But with the ABS, I don't grab a huge amount of front brake, but I'm not only using rear brake. So that's a really, really nice thing. And I know Andrew talked about that too when he talked about the Pan Am, that it was just like a really big selling point for him was how good that front ABS was in the dirt. The bike's handled being tipped over really, really well, which is nice. So between soft bags, which is when I'm in the dirt, I'm always using soft bags, and the engine protection, I've never had anything on the bike break from being tipped over in the dirt. So so far the engine protection's done really, really well. I've really only crashed in sand, but it's taken 5-10 mile an hour tip overs really, really well. So thumbs up on the engine protection.
All right, guys, so I've had my Pan America for about a year now, and I really wanted to test the capabilities of the Pan America and just where its limits were and where my riding limits were as well. Let's be honest, if you're an expert rider off-road, it really opens up a lot more than, say, someone who's like a novice rider. And I've ridden dirt bikes my whole life, and so I'd consider myself above an intermediate off-road rider, somewhere between advanced and intermediate off-road rider. And so I went on some of the local roads up by my house. I went up to like Santiago Peak and some of these other roads that I've shown on my YouTube channel, and mostly Jeep roads and things like that. We went to Big Bear, we went up to Cleghorn, and we did Joshua Tree. You probably saw that on the channel as well. And so we've done a couple different roads that were new to us in terms of Harley-Davidsons that we wouldn't go on regular cruiser motorcycles. And it's a cool experience. It's rad to be able to, not have to trailer off-road dirt bikes like I've done my entire life to the dirt and then unload them off the trailer and then ride on these dirt roads. But to be able to just take the highway up there and just immediately jump off-road and just start riding on off-road terrain is a cool, different type of riding experience that has been fun. And I did a couple stints with Rawhide as well, where I went and rode adventure touring bikes. Me personally, the type of rides that I would do, a lot of wider trails that have hard packed dirt. Once you just get into steep stuff with a lot of rocks, a lot of gravel, or like really deep sand, that's kind of where I draw the limit with the Pan America. It is still, on the heavier side when you compare it to like a 450cc dirt bike or something like that. So something that's rated for like a Jeep or, a designated off-highway vehicle, road that isn't too technical, I feel very comfortable in taking the Pan America off-road on things like that. Once you get into like technical single track stuff, that's where I kind of draw the line. I wouldn't take the bike into that type of terrain. But I was also really surprised when we did like the long, just highway only treks. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed the bike as well. When we went up to Santa Cruz and did the whole highway down through Big Sur, had a ton of fun on that bike. The suspension, incredible. Just the ride modes, all the different electronics with the ABS and the traction control, all that stuff was super reassuring when we were, in the rain or whatnot. It seems like we've been riding in the rain a lot lately. And so having that bike, even if it's just on road only, has been a lot of fun as well. In terms of off-road, I've just been running the stock tires that come with the Pan America, and I've had pretty good luck with them. I've never really felt like, hey, I really could use the Anarchy knobbies on these roads. However, I haven't really done a lot of real gnarly stuff, and a lot of the terrain I've tried to tackle, I didn't really try to hit it super hard. I just took my time. It's done really, really well. So.
So my final thoughts. This is my favorite bike I've ever owned by a pretty significant margin. I don't have any temptation to sell it for anything else. I love it. It's amazing. I would buy it again in a heartbeat. If this got stolen or totaled or something, I would be buying another Pan Am because I'm in love with the bike. I can do whatever I want on it. I mean, heck, if I put some sticky rubber on there, I could take it to a track day. You could take it out into the dirt. When Matt says, hey, we're going to Tombstone, I just ask when. It's such a loyal companion. It's down for whatever, My future plans for the bike are pretty limited, just continuing to ride. I want to take it to Sturgis. I want to go on all of our future rides, which hopefully maybe like Sequoia or maybe like Crater Lake or something like that would be fun. Really looking forward to just riding it more. There's some additional engine protection that I want to get, for the exhaust guard. I really like these Kriega soft bags, so I'm going to see if I can't get the top bag to replace the Harley one I have here. I just want something that kind of matches the side bags here. It's more of a vanity thing than anything else. But other than that, the bike's kind of already done. Like, I don't have anything else to do to it. So just ride it more, right? Harley built a bike that it just really feels like it wants to be ridden endlessly. I was watching some engineer talk about a car that he designed. It was the car you never wanted to get out of. You just wanted to keep driving it. And that's how I feel about the Pan Am. They built the endless bike, and that's I think probably the best praise I can give it.
Yeah. Thanks, dude. No, we're not filming. Don't worry about it. Holy shit. His red lights flashing in my face. Yeah, bring that in too. That'll be nice.
You got your white balance? We gotta keep it PG.
Yeah, I mean, my content's very family friendly. Like, we don't need any Andrew nudity in there. All right, we good, Nick?